In Search of the Miraculous by P.D. Ouspensky, Chapter 8. And this is Gurdjieff speaking now. In all, there are 4 states of consciousness possible in man, but ordinary man, that is, man number 1, 2, and 3, lives in the 2 lowest states of consciousness only. The 2 higher states of consciousness are inaccessible to him, and although he may have flashes of these states, he is unable to understand them, and he judges them from the point of view of those states in which it is usual for him to be. The first of these states is sleep. The second is what he calls clear consciousness, or waking state of consciousness. But the term clear consciousness seems to have been given in jest, especially since you realize that clear consciousness ought in reality to be what the state in which man lives in and acts in really is. The third state of consciousness is self-remembering, or self-consciousness, or consciousness of one's being. It is usual to consider that we have this state of consciousness, or that we can have it if we want it. Our science and philosophy have overlooked the fact that we do not possess this state of consciousness, and we cannot create it in ourselves by desire or by decision alone. The 4th state of consciousness is called the objective state of consciousness, and in this state a man can see things as they are. Flashes of this state of consciousness also occur in man. In the religions of all nations, there are indications of the possibility of a state of consciousness of this kind, which is called enlightenment, and various other names, but which cannot be described in words. But the right way to objective consciousness is through development of self-consciousness. If an ordinary man is artificially brought into a state of objective consciousness and afterwards brought back to his usual state, he will remember nothing, and he will think that for a time he had lost consciousness. But in the state of self-consciousness, a man can have flashes of objective consciousness and remember them. The 4th state of consciousness in a man means an altogether different state of being. It is the result of inner growth and of long and difficult work on oneself. But the 3rd state of consciousness constitutes the natural right of a man as he is, and if a man does not possess it, it is only because of the wrong conditions of his life. It can be said that without any exaggeration that at the present time the 3rd state of consciousness occurs in man only in the form of very rare flashes, and that it can be made more or less permanent in him only by means of special training. For most people, even for educated and thinking people, the chief obstacle in the way of acquiring self-consciousness consists in the fact that they think they already possess it. That is, they possess self-consciousness and everything connected with it, individuality in the sense of a permanent and unchangeable I, will, ability to do, and so on. It is evident that a man will not be interested if you tell him that he can acquire by long and difficult work something which, in his opinion, he already has. On the contrary, he will think either that you are mad or that you want to deceive him with a view of personal gain. The 2 higher states of consciousness, self-consciousness and objective consciousness, are connected with the functioning of the higher centers in man. In addition to those centers of which we have spoken so far, there are 2 other centers in man, the higher emotional and the higher thinking. These centers are in us. They are fully developed and they are working all the time, but their work fails to reach our ordinary consciousness. The cause of this lies in special properties of our so-called clear consciousness. In order to understand what the difference is between the states of consciousness, let us return to the 1st state of consciousness, which is sleep. This is an entirely subjective state of consciousness, A man is immersed in dreams. Whether he remembers them or does not matter. Even if some real impressions reach him, such as sounds, voices, warmth, cold, the sensation of his own body, they arouse in him only fantastic, subjective images. Then a man wakes up, and at first glance, this is quite a different state of consciousness. He can move, he can talk with other people, he can make calculations ahead, he can see danger and avoid it, and so on. It stands to reason that he is in a better position than when he was asleep. But if we go a little more deeply into things, and if we take a look into his inner world, into his thoughts, into the causes of his actions, we shall see that he is almost in the same state as when he is asleep. And it is even worse, because in sleep he is passive. That is, he cannot do anything. In the waking state, however, he can do something all the time, and the results of his actions will be reflected upon him or upon those around him. And yet he does not remember himself. He is a machine. Everything will happen. He cannot stop the flow of his thoughts. He cannot control his imagination, his emotions, his intention. He lives in a subjective world of I love, I do not love, I like, I do not like, I want, I do not want. That is what he thinks he likes, or what he thinks he does not like, or what he thinks he wants, or what he thinks he does not want. He does not see the real world. The real world is hidden from him by a wall of imagination. He lives in sleep. He is asleep. What is called clear consciousness is sleep, and a far more dangerous sleep than the sleep at night in bed. Let us take some event in the life of humanity. For instance, war. There is a war going on at the present moment. What does it signify? It signifies that several millions of sleeping people are trying to destroy several millions of other sleeping people. They would not do this, of course, if they were to wake up. Everything that takes place is owing to the sleep. Both states of consciousness, sleep and the waking state, are equally subjective. Only by beginning to remember oneself does a man really awaken, and then all surrounding life acquires for him a different aspect, a different meaning. He sees that it is the life of sleeping people, a life in sleep. All that men say, all that they do, all that they say and do in sleep, all this can have no value whatever. Only awakening and what leads to awakening has a value in reality. How many times have I been asked here whether wars can be stopped? Certainly they can, but for this it is only necessary that people should awaken. It seems a small thing. It is, however, the most difficult thing that there can be, because this sleep is induced and maintained by the whole of surrounding life, by all surrounding conditions. But how can one awaken? How can one escape this sleep? These questions are the most important, the most vital that can ever confront a man. And before this, it is necessary to be convinced of the very fact of sleep. But it is possible to be convinced of this only by trying to awaken. When a man understands that he does not remember himself, and that to remember himself means to awaken to some extent, and when at the same time he sees by experience how difficult it is to remember himself, he will understand that he cannot awaken simply by having the desire to do so. It can be said, still more precisely, that a man cannot awaken by himself. But if, let us say, 20 people make an agreement that whoever of them awakens first shall wake the rest, they already have some chance. Even this, however, is insufficient, because all the 20 can go to sleep at the same time and dream that they are waking up, and therefore still more is necessary. They must be looked after by a man who is not asleep, or who does not fall asleep as easily as they do, and he goes to sleep consciously when this is possible, when it will do no harm to himself or to others. They must find such a man and hire him to wake them and not allow them to fall asleep again. And without this, it is impossible to awaken. This is what must be understood. It is possible to think that for thousands of years, it is possible to think for 1,000 years. It is possible to write whole libraries of books, to create theories by the millions, and all this in sleep, and without any possibility of awakening. On the contrary, these books and these theories, written and created in sleep, will merely send other people to sleep, and so on. There is nothing new in the idea of sleep. People have been told, almost since the creation of the world, that they are asleep, and that they must awaken. How many times is this said in the Gospels, for instance? Awake, watch, sleep not. Christ's disciples even slept when he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane for the last time. It is all there. But do men understand it? Men simply take it as a form of speech, as an expression, as a metaphor. They completely fail to understand that it must be taken literally. And again, it's easy to understand why. In order to understand this literally, it is necessary to awaken a little, or at least try to awaken. I tell you seriously that I have been asked several times why nothing is said about sleep in the Gospels, although it is there spoken of almost on every page. This simply shows that people read the Gospels in sleep. So long as a man sleeps profoundly and is wholly immersed in dreams, he cannot even think about the fact that he is asleep. If he were to think that he is asleep, he would wake up. So everything goes on, and men have not the slightest idea that they are losing because of what they are losing because of this sleep. As I've already said, as he is organized, that is, being such as nature has created him, man can be a self-conscious being. Such he is created, and such he is born. But he is born among sleeping people. And of course he falls asleep among them just at the very time that he should have begun to become conscious of himself. Everything has a hand in this. The involuntary imitation of older people on the part of the child, voluntary and involuntary suggestion, and what is called education. Every attempt to awaken on the child's part is instantly stopped. This is inevitable, and a great many efforts and a great deal of help are necessary in order to awaken later, when thousands of sleep-compelling habits have been accumulated. And this very seldom happens. In most cases, a man, when still a child, already loses the possibility of awakening. He lives in sleep all his life, and he dies in sleep. Furthermore, many people die long before their physical death. But of such cases, we will speak later on. Now turn your attention to what I pointed out to you before. A fully developed man, which I call man in the full sense of the word, should possess 4 states of consciousness. Ordinary man, that is man number 1, number 2, and number 3, lives in 2 states of consciousness only. He knows, or at least he can know, of the existence of the 4th state of consciousness. All these mystical states and so on are wrong definitions, but when they are not deceptions or imitations, they are flashes of what we call an objective state of consciousness. But man does not know of the 3rd state of consciousness, or even suspect it. Nor can he suspect it, because if you were to explain to him that the third state of consciousness, that is to say, in what it consists, he would say that it was his usual state. He considers himself to be a conscious being, governing his own life. Facts that contradict that he considers to be accidental or temporary, which will change by themselves. By considering that he possesses self-consciousness, as it were by nature, a man will not, of course, try to approach or obtain it. And yet, without self-consciousness, or the third state, the fourth state, except in rare flashes, is impossible. Knowledge, however, the real objective knowledge, towards which man, as he asserts, is struggling, is possible only in the fourth state of consciousness. That is, it is conditional upon the full possession of the fourth state of consciousness. Knowledge, which is acquired in the ordinary state of consciousness, is intermixed with dreams. There you have a complete picture of the being of man, number 1, 2, and 3.